We have seen a lot of physical uranium purchases lately by uranium companies in particular, including a small 300,000 pound purchase by Encore. What's your rationale for buying and holding uranium, and do you plan to do this from an investment or speculative angle?
You want to take that, Bill?
Sure. I think I mentioned in the beginning, we aren't speculators on price. We do think it's a good entry point, but our main motivation in taking down the uranium was somewhat coincidental with the rush into uranium by a number of other entries, each one of which has a slightly different take on why they're doing it. Ours was calculated in terms of its size, and also in the fact that the nuclear industry is starting to float proposals for contracts, and in evaluating those, we certainly want to look at some of those, but we also don't want to be in the process of commissioning a new well field and having some hiccup delay us by a month or two or three on our delivery schedule. So by having that reserve, it really is an insurance policy and possible interruptions or unforeseen hiccups in terms of a delivery schedule on contracts. And as such, I don't think, we obviously review things and it's not a static picture, but there's no intention on building a massive uranium resource for us. That's the primary function for it in our case.
Okay, so speaking of delivery schedules, the next question is, what's the status of the U.S. Strategic Uranium Reserve Program, and will Encore be in a position to participate in that?
Well, it's currently, going through what they call the evaluation process with the Department of Energy. So basically, DOE is doing a NEPA analysis. That's the National Environmental Protection Act. Any federal action has to go through that process. And they're also going to be issuing a request for information on how they want and get information on how they could structure the uranium purchasing program. The funding is there for $75 million, which is for fiscal year 2021. And so the expectation is at some point that they will be purchasing within, by the end of the fiscal year, at least have commit to purchases before the end of the fiscal year. Currently, there's an appropriations and budget process going on right now. Our expectation is DOE is going to ask for the $150 million for next year, and based on the bipartisan support we saw come out of the appropriations process, as well as some of the other actions by Congress and the statements coming out of the Biden administration, we expect that it'll continue to be funded and hopefully at the full amount. And from Encore's perspective, if we're given an opportunity to participate in it, we're not going to turn it down. We will, if we're in a position where we can actually participate in that buying program, we certainly will. We will consider that at the point that opportunity arises.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody really know what they're going to be offering the companies, or what companies are going to be offering? I think the point is to get uranium production started or supported in the U.S. Can they do that by spreading around the purchases to 4 or 5 or 6 different companies?
I would say that there's a limited value in them being able to do that. They're going to have to pick out. They're going to have to pick. What they're going to do is they've said they're going to do a competitive process. And, in the past, the DOE has a history of doing uranium purchases from 1964 all the way to 1982. And their most recent, and it also provides a good template for DOE right now. And effectively, they were doing competitive biddings back in 1982, as recently as then. And basically, the competition is they would let out a contract for a fixed price, and basically you competed to see who could actually deliver into that contract at that price. And it's not necessarily on a first come first serve basis. It's based on there's a whole lot of factors that go into that calculation. And it's public information. And my expectation is that we'll come up with, even though they're going through this RFI process, we'll come up with something similar to that. But it'll be in blocks big enough to where it may be a few 100,000 pounds here, a few 100,000 pounds there on a purchase request or proposal, but it'll be something they have to deliver into. And the idea is to restart mining so we can sustain the existing infrastructure and workforce. So I expect that we'll know more, but not everybody will be able to participate in it.
Okay, and I guess a question more, a broader question, but along the same lines. Sort of, what's your take on the Biden clean energy plan and the associated infrastructure spending plan? What do you see as the future for the U.S. nuclear industry?
Bill, you want to start, and I'll finish?
Sure. I think, as you pointed out, it's really, if you're going to deal with baseload windmills and solar panels, don't cut it. And you've got a very, and as Texas has demonstrated pretty convincingly this winter. So really, there is no alternative for green energy other than an increase in nuclear. And we think that we'll see good support from the administration. To the degree, I think that more than the support, I think the timing and the swiftness of their movement may be the issue. They're a bit more bureaucratic than the previous administration, and things will take longer, I believe, and be reviewed more. I don't know about more thoroughly, but the review process is likely to take a bit longer with this administration. But I think the support and the underlying position and being pro-nuclear here again is the key. And I see it. It's not going to be a short-term event. I think the climate concerns, the green energy concerns, are not a passing fancy. It's something to be here for a while. And I think that coupled with the global growth and the global concerns of the very same subject are going to see the nuclear industry and really the most prolonged cycle that we've seen for the private industry sector probably ever. And we're just on the cusp of that. So, we certainly welcome their support and think it'll be a lasting thing. And quite frankly, I don't think it's going to be subject to political change. How it's done and timelines certainly might be affected by political change. But even if we swing back, the pendulum swings back to the other side here, I think there's going to have to be a more basic and strong commitment to nuclear going forward than we've seen, since pre-3 Mile Island back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add is that, the Biden administration has stated very clearly that in order for them to execute on their clean energy plans, they need to keep the existing nuclear fleet going. And it'll be a test. From my perspective, in my opinion, I think it'll be a test to see how they respond to the announced closures of the Byron and Dresden nuclear power plants that are scheduled to close this year by Exelon, and those are vital to meet their objectives and also to live up to their commitments. We know that the state of Illinois is acting, but it would be good to have a signal from the federal government on this. I think Secretary Granholm has weighed in somewhat on this, but I think she really needs some strong policy leadership. But the bottom line is that I think that even if you go to the people that are the most progressive on the clean energy side of it, there's no denying that nuclear has to be part of it in order for them to achieve their goal. Right now, it contributes 55% of the clean energy in the United States. And so you can't get to your endpoints, what is it, a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 without either continuing nuclear power as it is or increasing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you and I are preaching to the same choir here in this call, but really when it comes down to it, were you surprised the Biden administration is really speaking about nuclear in the same vein as hydro?
I'm not surprised that, I think that's a realistic position for them. And the thing is that the one thing we won't see is more hydro plants. In fact, they're actually tearing some down right now.
Then hydro is not, all things in all instances. Washington State was almost exclusively hydro for a long time, and a few years of drought really put it's the same as the wind not blowing for windmills.